Hi everyone and welcome to this video tutorial for satin stitch. Satin stitch is a lovely filler stitch, so today we're going to use it to fill this rectangle with a neat section of stitches that all go in the same direction. You'll see that I have divided up the rectangle. I've drawn some lines on it. These are just guidelines, and they're going to be completely stitched over the top. They're just to try and keep the stitches all neat and all straight, and that is much easier to do if you've got some little guidelines there to help you. I am working today with 4 strands, so 2 strands that I have doubled over. You can vary sort of what the texture of the satin stitch looks like depending on how many strands of thread you use. If you work with 6 strands, you would fill quite quickly, but it wouldn't look necessarily as neat and even, depending on what effect you're after. If you work with 1 or 2 strands, it'll be very smooth and flat and neat. So it all depends really on what sort of texture you want in your stitching. So I'm going to start here at this end, bringing my needle up at the bottom, and then straight back in at the top. And then I'm going to just come along to this guideline and do this one up from the bottom and straight back in at the top. And then I'm going to start to fill this area in between with stitches. All of these are going to come in the same direction from bottom to top. It just makes it that little bit easier to judge. And now we've just got to fill the gaps in between. And one more stitch in here should do it. And then just one more there to fill in that little gap. And then I'm going to come along to our next section and make a stitch there. So I'm just going to carry on with this video, and then I'll show you what it looks like at the end and give you a few more sort of tips and tricks for satin stitch. Okay, so it's taken me about, I'll just estimate 15 to 20 minutes to fill the rest of this rectangle since I paused the video. So you'll see that it is a slow stitch. If you want the stitch to look neat, it does take time. So as I do the last few stitches, I've just got a couple of tips for you to help make your satin stitch look really lovely and smooth. So the first one is, if you're working with more than one strand for your satin stitch, always separate the threads individually and then rejoin them together to thread your needle. And that will just help to make sure there's no sort of twists or kinks in the thread, and they will lie much flatter. Another tip is, if you've got any small gaps, so I had one, I've lost it over here. It's only minor, just a little gap. But if you wanted to fill that in, the best way to do that is to come back at the end with just one strand of thread and do a single stitch, or 2 if you need to, just to fill that gap in. Because if you went back and tried to fill it with the 4 strands that you're working with, it would sit on top of the stitches you've currently got and wouldn't lie flat. Another tip to get your stitches to lie flat is just occasionally to bring your needle underneath and just gently move up and down like that, and that just helps to get them all sitting nicely side by side. Right, so just the final couple of stitches here. Oh, that one didn't go very well. And there we have it. You just tie off on the back and you're all done. So you can see it creates a really lovely block of stitching that is lovely and shiny. It reflects the light nicely and it just looks really effective.